Well, hello there. Welcome to the episode. Today we're chatting about my recent 10-week transformation because I consciously decided that I was going to eat up and just indulge more frequently while visiting family and friends in Vancouver over the summer, as well as when I was in London for some of July and August. I put on 12 to 13 pounds of essentially pure body fat over the course of 10 weeks, which is quite a bit, especially considering that I'm not a 200-pound plus dude, because fat gain and fat loss is relative, meaning 12 pounds for someone who is 100 pounds is a lot different than 12 pounds for someone who is 200 pounds. It's a much larger percentage of total body weight and or fat for the 100-pounder. Post Vancouver and London, I decided to head to Mexico, and I knew it was going to be hot. Wearing minimal clothing is also a pretty good motivator to be and stay lean. And also, I just didn't feel as good with that extra weight on me. So when I booked my flight, I figured, let's do it. Let's lose some fat and boost my well-being, because my sweet spot body composition and lifestyle wise is in the 10-ish% body fat range. And after that 10 weeks of conscious indulgence, I think it's important to double click on the fact that I did this with awareness. I was under no illusions as far as the fact that I was putting on body fat. It was a conscious choice. So at the end, I was up in the 16 to 18% body fat range, and I just don't feel as good there. I don't feel as athletic, as energetic, as healthy, and I just much prefer the way that I look, closer to 10% as well. Now, that's not to say that you need to be as lean as me. Everyone has different goals, preferences, priorities, where they feel their best body composition-wise, as well as what they like from a visual standpoint. Now, if you're curious about where that spot is for you, what your ideal weight is, listen to episode 118 titled How to Determine Your Ideal Body Weight. It's actually a really popular episode because it approaches ideal body weight in a unique fashion, I'd say, in a very individually specific way. Funny enough, I actually find doing these transformations and challenges so much fun. Like, watching my body change on a week-to-week basis is super cool. And I always learn more about myself, my body, the process. I love it. And it's interesting because I hear this quite often from my clients in the sense that the process is often a lot more enjoyable than they thought that it would be, because they're learning, they're seeing results, and they're feeling better day after day, which, I mean, who doesn't want to feel better, right? So first off, how did I gain the weight? What did I do to put on 12 plus pounds in only 10 weeks? Because that's over a pound every 7 days. I started eating a lot more. Shocking, right? You probably could have guessed that. I was actually tracking my calorie intake about as precisely as you can during the fat gain phase. So while I was in Vancouver and London, I was logging everything that I was eating and drinking. Now, eating meals at restaurants makes tracking accurately a little bit tougher, but I tracked to the best of my ability, and I also logged all of the meals that I cooked myself, which was actually the vast majority of them. I was still favoring single ingredient whole foods. However, I was eating a lot more of them, and I was also mixing in a lot more treat foods than usual. For example, I found these Magnum brand, not the condoms, dairy-free ice cream bars. And when I was in London, I was crushing them. They're super delicious, really easy to eat, and they're 250 calories a pop, and they came in boxes of 3. And so that's 750 calories right there. That's like half of a small female's entire daily intake. Calories add up quick. I was also eating a ton of sushi. I'm always sure to get my sushi fix when I'm in Vancouver because the quality is just amazing. And I also found this cool sushi spot called Itsu in London, which you would have seen a bunch on my social. And it's like a fast food sushi joint. So they have fresh made sushi just ready to go all the time. And so I was probably at Itsu realistically 4 times per week while I was in London. Now, sushi can be a super healthful meal. You can order it to be single ingredient whole foods, which I was doing, but again, like anything, it all adds up. Activity-wise, I think that you'll find this interesting. I worked out more than usual while I was in Vancouver and London, so I exercised more during the fat gain phase. I was hitting the gym like 5 to 6 times per week because I figured, hey, maybe I can put on a little bit of muscle tissue and take advantage of all of these added calories. More on that in a minute. Not only did I exercise more during the fat gain phase, I also moved more during the fat gain phase. My step counts were higher, especially in London because it is such a big city and I was exploring the whole thing on foot. I did take the metro here and there, but I was crushing like 17 to 18,000 steps per day on average, not sporadically, consistently. My activity, when you add up the workouts and the step counts, was super high. So this is really illuminating. Despite all of this calorie burning activity, I still managed to put on 12 pounds of fat in 10 weeks. And it's not like I was eating out for every single meal because I wasn't, but I was clearly eating a lot more than I was burning, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have gained any body fat. I would have just maintained. Now, did I gain some muscle? Maybe a very small amount, but 10 weeks just isn't enough time to put on any appreciable amount of muscle tissue when you are natural, aka not using performance-enhancing drugs, which I do not. If you're a complete beginner to weight training, then you can put on muscle in 10 weeks, but I'm not. I've been training since I was like 14 and I'm 35 now, so no newbie gains for this guy. Now, as I transitioned into the fat loss phase, I tracked my calorie intake in MyFitnessPal for the first 2 weeks, and then I just decided to go by feel/mindfully eat for the remaining 8 weeks. This is sort of backwards, right? Most folks would just eat whatever and not track while they're indulging, and then they'd track when fat loss is their goal because you want to know what you're taking in and how much. However, there is a big caveat here. Going by feel or mindfully eating without formally tracking is a very advanced fat loss tactic, okay? I've got years of tracking macros and calories under my belt, and I literally do this nutrition stuff all day long and have for over a decade. Also, even though I didn't formally track my intake, I still had a very good idea of what and how much I was taking in nutrition-wise because it's just second nature for me at this point. I've had so much practice and experience with nutrition that me not formally tracking is sort of like a professional golfer going out on the course and not writing down their score. But they know how they played, right? They're sort of subconsciously tracking birdies, pars, bogeys, how many good, neutral, and bad shots they're hitting. And I mention this because I just want to be sure that you're not comparing yourself to me and thinking, well, I've got fat loss goals and Marcus goes by feel, so I can too. But it's not apples to apples. Don't compare yourself to me. And I say that from love because I want you to set yourself up for fat loss success. And for 99% of people, that is tracking in one way or another. For example, a super experienced carpenter can probably frame a house essentially by feel at a certain point. They look at the blueprint and they're like, okay, I got this more or less. That's where I'm at this point in my career. Nutrition, fat loss, and lifestyle is my life. I do it 24/7. And so I really want to emphasize this point because I want you to get results. And tracking in one way or another is almost certainly the way for you to do that. I'm also talking to fitness professionals, by the way. I've helped a lot of personal trainers and fitness professionals with their personal nutrition and fat loss goals. Reason being is, just because someone is in the fitness industry doesn't mean that they know what the dealio is nutrition-wise. Trust me, working out is one thing, diet is a whole nother animal, and it is massively more complex and nuanced, which makes sense because working out takes what? An hour a day? Nutrition and lifestyle is the other 23. Now, I'm not shitting on other fitness professionals or personal trainers. I used to be an in-person personal trainer for 7 years, but this is just the reality of things. My point is that the level of expertise that it takes to guide someone through a workout versus the level of refinement that it takes to have people reach their fat loss goals consistently are two very different things. Meaning, even if you're listening to this and you're in the fitness industry, I'd still recommend tracking your nutritional intake. Having said that, you don't have to use MyFitnessPal, for example, or something like Chronometer. There are quite a few ways to account for your food intake. For example, you could use a food diary and write down everything that you eat and adjust it as need be. Or if you tend to like to eat a lot of the same foods every day, that sort of standardizes your intake and you can tweak things that way. The vast majority of my clients don't actually track their own macros and calories, but I do it for them. Their specific portions are built into their programs, and so they've got literally thousands of meal options and combinations to choose from, but they're not pulling out an app or really logging anything. However, they're weighing and measuring their food based on what their individualized program says. So we are absolutely tracking. So there are lots of different systems or approaches that you can use to account for what and how much you're eating. Using an app isn't the only way. But if you are doing this on your own, it is a pretty darn good way for a lot of folks. Now, something that I was measuring the whole time was my weight, and it was interesting to watch it climb up over the first 10 weeks and then obviously trend down for the fat loss phase. And if your goal is to lose fat and your weight isn't trending down, fat loss ain't happening. Simple as that. And the most common rebuttal to this that I get is, but what about muscle? Am I gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time? And is that why the scale isn't moving? Are they offsetting one another? I touched on this a little bit before, but muscle gain is a very slow process. In comparison, fat loss is like 50 to 100 times faster, maybe more. There's just no way outside of being a complete newbie to training and nutrition and dialing it in perfectly right away, which nobody does, or using performance-enhancing drugs, that you're going to build an equal amount of muscle while simultaneously losing that amount of fat. So if the scale isn't trending down, you're not losing fat. One hypothetical caveat to that would be if you're just losing fat at such a slow rate that it's actually comparable to the amount of muscle that you're putting on. But practically speaking, that would be so slow that you wouldn't even be able to track it really, and or you'd most likely just quit because you'd be like, this isn't working, I'm not losing fat. And I don't say that to discourage you, quite the opposite. I say that because you're here for the truth and you're listening to this, and so you clearly want results, and you're just not getting them if the scale isn't moving down. I also used the mirror to assess my progress, and you can totally implement this as well. However, like going by feel nutrition-wise or mindfully eating for fat loss, it's also much more of an advanced tactic. I assess my clients' progress photos every week, and I can see changes on a 7-day basis, but there are 3 reasons for that. 1, It's much easier to be objective with someone else, meaning it's harder to assess your own progress accurately because you are you. 2, you see yourself on a 24/7 basis, and so you're experiencing changes in real time versus like I am with my clients on a 7-day basis. Now, you can totally sidestep this by taking progress photos of yourself, but again, it can be quite difficult to be truly objective with yourself. And 3, again, I do this all day long. I've looked at tens of thousands of progress photos, so favor the scale. The scale is your number one tool in regards to assessing your fat loss progress, especially if you're coaching yourself. So what did I change nutrition-wise to yield the fat loss results that I got? First of all, I reduced the amount of treats I was eating. I indulged far less frequently. However, I did still have 2 to 3 treat meals per week during the fat loss phase and 3 to 4 full treat days over the 10 weeks where I just ate whatever I felt like eating that day. Now, I would have progressed a lot faster if I opted out of the treat days especially, but I was in no rush really, and I just felt like doing it. It's also worth mentioning that I typically compensate for the treat days somewhat just because the following day my hunger would be reduced, and so a treat day would be followed by a much lighter day calorie-wise simply because my appetite was down. I don't recommend treat days to my clients or just people in general for a number of reasons, but we're not going to cover that in this episode. I just want to be honest about what I actually did to get the results. Also, if I had to speculate, I'd say that if I chose not to have the treat meals and treat days and just powered straight through, I probably could have achieved the results that I got in half the time, maybe even less. But again, I wasn't in any rush, and I just chose not to go that far with things. As far as my clients go, I include a weekly treat meal into their programs, and it's not that their bodies need a physical calorie bump, just like I didn't. It's just a psychological break where maybe they go on a date night with their partner or head out with some friends for dinner. Sometimes my clients will just opt out of their treat meal if they're not feeling it or they want to progress faster, but most of my clients do have their treat meal each week. And quite often it does end up being closer to 2-ish, sometimes even 3 treat meals just because life, As far as nutrition specifics go, I ate the foods that my clients eat and that I recommend you eat. Single ingredient whole foods that are both super healthy and super satiating, because the name of the game when it comes to fat loss is essentially mitigating hunger. We've got to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose fat. And so we want to make that calorie deficit feel as effortless as possible. And by far the best way to do that is via eating single ingredient whole foods. I never once felt genuine hunger over the course of the 10-week fat loss phase unless it was mealtime and I was ready to eat. This is a sign of a properly designed nutrition for fat loss protocol. If you are hungry all the time, you're doing it wrong. Something is off. I'm not talking about cravings where you're just like, oh, pizza would taste good. That's not hunger. That's just wanting to eat. I'm talking about legitimately feeling hungry, as in a neck down physical sensation that doesn't discriminate. Meaning, if you think that you're hungry and someone is like, oh, you're hungry, here is a beautiful piece of grilled salmon with some rice and veggies. And you're like, no thanks, that's not hunger. Someone who is genuinely hungry isn't turning down delicious single ingredient whole food like that. Cravings, on the other hand, are specific, and they are very often for things like chocolate, chips, candy, ice cream, pizza, etc. Hunger doesn't discriminate. Hunger will eat single ingredient whole foods. And here's a practical little takeaway for you. What's your favorite protein source? Mine is filet. Filet mignon with a nice char on it and a bunch of salt is my absolute fave. Think about yours. Now, whenever you think, I'm hungry, just ask yourself, would you eat your favorite protein source right now? If the answer is no, you're not hungry. You just want to eat, and that's fine, but your body isn't needing anything. You just want the sensation of taste. So, a properly structured fat loss program shouldn't have you feeling hungry unless it's actually mealtime. What about booze during the fat gain phase versus the fat loss phase? I drank a little bit more during the fat gain phase. However, it really wasn't enough to move the needle all that much in either direction. Booze just doesn't play a big role in my life anymore, which you know firsthand because you've been following along with the pod, and I've shared a bunch about my relationship with alcohol and how it shifted. Did I notice any changes as far as my energy levels, mental clarity, sleep, libido, digestion, skin, joints, etc. go? My energy levels were definitely better during the fat loss phase, as well as my mental clarity, digestion, and skin, which all makes perfect sense. Not that my skin was bad by any means during the fat gain phase, but it was just that much better during the fat loss phase. I'd also say that I'm emotionally more stable when I'm leaner, and that makes perfect sense too because of blood sugar levels and digestive quality. There really wasn't any difference in my libido, sleep, or joint health between the fat gain and fat loss phases. Those things were equal across the board. One thing that I will say is that what I like to call the transition period is always difficult no matter who you are. Meaning, when you go from indulging more frequently to indulging less frequently, it is very apparent that the treat foods have a certain pull or addictive-like quality to them. And there's essentially a withdrawal period that everyone has to go through. So, the first 10 days for me when I decided that I was going to get lean, I noticed that I wanted the treats that I had been indulging in over the previous 10 weeks quite a bit because the brain is like, where'd all that delicious, over-the-top, hyper-palatable, calorie-dense food go? It's an evolutionary jackpot, right? No one is immune to the transition period. It's easier for some versus others, and it depends on a number of factors, but I felt it, and it can be uncomfortable. Fortunately, I knew that it would fade and get easier day by day after that withdrawal period was over, but like I said, no one is immune to that transition. It's always at least a little bit uncomfortable, no matter who you are. So this little experiment was really fun. I enjoyed it. And if it wasn't clear to you before, it's gotta be now that nutrition is the answer to your fat loss goals. I worked out and moved more via step counts during the fat gain phase than I did during the fat loss phase. Diet is the key to body composition improvements. These results were 100% nutrition-based in nature. Actually, they're more like 120% because like I just mentioned, I burned even fewer calories during the fat loss phase via activity. So nutrition had to pick up that slack. Another key takeaway is that once you learn how to get in shape and you have that experience, consciously putting on some body fat can be completely stress-free because you know that you know exactly how to take it off and you've done it before, right? Meaning once you have these tools, if you go on a vacation or you indulge more over the course of the summer or the holidays come up and things start to slip, or you just decide that your body composition and health isn't a priority for some period of time because other things are of more importance, it's chill. No worries. You can reel things in whenever you'd like to. So investing in learning exactly how to get the body that you want is going to pay off for the rest of your life. Because once you have that experience, that tool is now in your toolkit forever. You might need some touch-ups here and there, some additional accountability, but big picture, it is a gift that just keeps on giving. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. Instagram is at n1fitness, TikTok, the n1fitness, and YouTube, I'm at Marcus Sadu. Feel free to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, if you'd like to, of course. And be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.